about 275 millimeters is acceptable for micro four thirds, and 1 inch sensors are it's straight up 200 millimeters.
Okay, because my f7 refractor
Mhm.
gets just hits 4 degrees diagonal,
Diagonal.
which is what you said is it was the minimum, right? Just about gets 4 degrees. I think it's 4.01 or something really close to it.
You,
Um, whereas
well,
a 300 millimeter lens on the camera I got on an APS-C. So I was going to do a full frame on the refractor to get to 4 degrees, and because I want to do imaging for stacking myself, and then
okay.
the camera, the APS-C camera with a 300 millimeter lens, if that meets the requirements,
It,
then
it sounds like it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I was asking you about the spreadsheet so we can actually start figuring stuff out. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
'Cause I'm
So
going to have multiple rigs running for definite.
yeah. So there's going to be like um in instructions that we're going to distribute to the group. We finalized some things today, so I have to make modifications to them to make it complete. I even have a table of F basically of our gold standard f-stop ISO setting and shutter speeds that we're asking for.
So, um, I think we should have a technical conversation at some point, more technical, to talk about all of that and to talk about the software. And if you already have pre-built scripts for the software that we can use for the
Yeah,
image durations and all this kind of stuff.
yeah. In fact, at least for the Nina software, I've built a pre-script sequence, um, so you can get your flats and darks, and a pre-built sequence for the exposures that we want for the clips.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the darks are just to get hot pixels and not to get any noise, because at such fast shutters there'll be no noise.
Right.
But you will be using it probably to detect hot pixels, right?
Yeah, for the darks.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the darks, yeah.
And
Um,
Corey, you were mentioning the focal length and having that sort of chart or table so volunteers can figure out. How are you going to have that available for folks?
it's going to be in the instruction documentation, and
Okay.
it'll also be in the documentation about creating flats and darks.
Okay, wonderful. So I've been fielding questions as well. And in the chat, it says our January meeting will be the very technical meeting. So be prepared for that one.
Right, and Laura's correct. The darks, the flats can be taken anytime.
Yeah.
The darks should be taken immediately after the eclipse.
Well, the dark should be taken when you're set up in case you get any additional dust bunnies on your sensor. If you take the flats prior to, you could end up dust could move and then your flats are no longer good, right?
Well, the flat, basically, the the flats,
There to
what
get dust bunnies so you can remove them out of it.
I think there's also a
just
temperature factor.
lens aberrations is what the deal is. But with the darks, it has to do with the ambient temperature
Mm-hmm.
and the conditions in which you shot the eclipse at the time. I suppose you could take it at any time, but the ideal time is probably after the eclipse.
Okay, because generally for imaging, I do my flats at the beginning of my set because in case any dust bunnies move around, you get some on your sensor and stuff. I can introduce some shadowing
Sure.
and taking
Sure.
it at the point of setup. Now your equipment is already in place, and if anything moves, like nothing's going to move once it's assembled. It's going to get moved in transport.
Sure. I was just thinking in terms of ease for those with the mounts that we're supplying. It's a little bit fidgety.
Yeah.
If you have your own setup, you can do it your own way, but what we would prefer is all the flats and darks be taken at the same exposures that you're taking of the Eclipse.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Speaking
No,
of,
yeah, I do. I've done some imaging, so yeah, I understand how it works.
sorry to interrupt you guys. Speaking of the mounts, when are we going to hear from from you guys regarding the final list of folks who will get it?
This is Laura. So we've selected so many of them, and we're sending out that information. Some people have already been notified. I have to go through one last list before we kind of make the very final announcements, and we'll do that by the end of this week. Yeah.
So the assumption should be that if we don't get an email, we were not selected, correct?
We'll be sending out you were not selected emails as well.
Yeah, you'll get an email regardless, no matter what the answer is.
Sure, thank you.
If you don't get an email, then you might be one of our people who we don't have an email for. So before you leave today, just make sure we have your email, and yeah, Hannah and Darlene are the ones matching survey responses with emails. So let's make sure, since you're here, that we get your email.
Then we have a question in the chat from John. He asks, we're going to have a dark library to cover the different exposures.
That would be associated with your equipment specifically, right? It wouldn't be applicable to other people's equipment. Everybody's camera and lens combinations are different. So when you submit your Eclipse images, you'll be submitting your flats and darks along with them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great question.
The darks identify hot pixels and other weirdness that goes on when you're taking photographs on a digital sensor. And so the idea of the darks is to identify those so you can extract them out of the data so you don't show up in your main image.
And the flats is for identifying aberrations on the lens, or aberrations of the lens, and other kinds of aberrations. So like what Liam was saying, there could be stuff on the sensor. You can subtract those frames out too.
When you think about it, if you don't know anything about any of the stuff, it's like, huh, that's a really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
When
Well,
I
then-
first signed up, there was a list of bracket settings for the exposures. And to set my system up, I was hoping that I could get that list again. I can't find it anywhere.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
Yes, we will have that. In fact, I don't know if we're sharing that document, but it's like in an Excel spreadsheet. Let me see if I can, since we kind of just finalized this today.
Are we sharing the gold standard today, Laura, or do we want to wait and officially?
No, it's okay. We can share it today.
Okay.
You know, just with a caveat that we've been talking to many different experts about this, so I feel pretty confident about it. But we'll, it's a good thing to work on for now.
Right. It's a good place to start. There might be changes that occur. But here it is. I don't know if I've properly shared it, but if Google comes back to me and says, hey, someone needs access to it, I'll be glad to give you access to it. The other place,
Jeffrey, just real quick, it just went to me directly.
oh,
Yeah,
did it?
yeah, because
Oh,
I was just texting.
I'm terribly sorry. Let me fix that.
So, Jeffrey, can you build scripts in Nina? I don't know Nina software. I've used other software, and for Eclipses, I've used Eclipse Maestro and Orchestrator and stuff.
Mhm.
Can you script them based on the timing for C1, C2, C3, and C4, or is it or does Nina have that ability? No.
Theoretically, you can build loopable scripting. So here, let me load one up for you and share my screen.
Because the nice thing of Orchestrator and so on is it's based off your location's timing for the various different contexts. So C1, C2, C3, and C4, and it's based
Right.
of plus or minus of those events. Which is why you need to have the GPS unit on your computer or plugged into your computer to get that gives you altitude as well, to give you precise location at altitude, so it knows exactly when those contacts will start in your location.
Right. It could be that smart, but I'm not implementing it in a particularly smart way, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I'm asking because I haven't used Nina. I've never used that piece of software. I've used many others, but
Right.
not that one.
Nina evidently won't work with my Nikon, so I'm going to have to use Digicam Control.
Because Nina is Canon and Astro imaging cameras only, isn't it?
It's Nikon, Canons, and any camera that has ASCOM drivers.
Oh, but are you using a Nikon 3000 series, Gary?
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
they don't have the APIs for it. They don't release the APIs for those
Right.
cameras. You only do it for the really high end ones. Nikon does.
Right.
But it
Yeah.
looks
We had a person here that had a Nikon 3500 and it wouldn't work for them. My Canon SL1 did work with it, even though it was a much older camera.
the Digicam Control looks like it will do the job.
So just, real quickly, I'm just sharing my screen. So you can theoretically, so like this is just the sequence timing, right? And I set it up to basically start for a very specific time. So like you can put in the time, the UTC time, converted into the time zone that you're in.
Mm.
And it'll run through this entire sequence, but I suppose you can probably do the same thing, wait for time for very specific times and have it run through a sequence. So this is the sequence that we want to take these images as in, and the exposure numbers. So the number of exposures for a given
And since it's a force, well, where I'll be in right on the line of totality. If the timing is it's over 4 minutes, 4:26,
mhm.
you could probably loop through those sequences multiple times in that amount of time.
Yeah.
Because those
But
exposures are really short.
potentially. So the thing that I found with at least the SL1 is that there's a 3.6 second cycle time between shots.
Yeah,
So,
if it's using an SD card, you'll have that amount of time because it has to write it to SD.
right, but Nina also brings it across to the computer, and that's part of the
Oh, so it's download. Oh, okay.
yeah, and I haven't figured out how not to tell it to do that and to work as a pure sequencer. So it's just bringing it across, and so the timings that I have in that particular script assumes that there's going to be a little bit of a delay time in between exposures.
Yeah, because of the communication speed over USB.
Right. So
Mhm.
like I'm using USB 2. And so that is unfortunately a limitation of USB 2, especially if the files are like 36 megapixels, for instance.
Yeah.
It takes some time to bring it over.
And
Um,
and that would be for all APS-C cameras. The newer full frame cameras will often have USB 3 or
Right.
Thunderbolt communication or something like that.
Right. And so it could potentially be quicker. The communication could be quicker, but I don't have anything to really test that hypothesis.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, so playing with the software on your own and knowing the limitations of the software camera setup is probably a good thing to know. And probably a good thing to share with the group because I don't have the money to go out and buy every combination of camera. So it's literally impossible for me to know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe as we get this information out to all of us and we do some testing on our cameras, we'll figure out what the timing is ourselves, and maybe we can report back to you.
Yeah, that would be extremely helpful, in fact.
Yeah, because one of my cameras is USB 2, but another one of the others is USB-C, which is a Thunderbolt communication.
Hmm.
So it's much faster.
Right, right. Um, and for those users that are using Sony cameras like the Alpha 7 Mark III, there I've tested that setup with the Sony ASCOM driver, and somewhere I have instructions to, and I think I put it in Discord, to set it up. We had another user that tried to set up his Sony and it didn't work. So your mileage may vary. I was able to set it up, but it was a little bit picky and it required a little bit of fiddling to get it to work. But once I got it to work, it worked like just any other camera.
And I can get you a link to that post in just a moment.
I'll try to do a free up those documents, those exposure documents, so that
Old
the
standard
links
directory?
actually work. I'll work on that right now.
I think Laura got it. It's okay.
Yeah, I think the ASA and the aperture are going to be try to be standardized, as I understand it, and it's just the exposure.
Correct. Everything will be standardized.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at as of today is ISO 100 F8
Right.
from 1/50th to 1/2. And there's technical reasons why we're choosing the timings that we're choosing. They have to do with what features that we're looking
Right.
for in the Eclipse. I'm going to throw in a link to everyone. For some reason, mine is just defaulting to individuals. This is a Xavier site. And it's an exposure calculator, and also it has a calculator to calculate field of view is on the same page.
And it is now in the resources channel in the Discord.
Yeah, I see it there. Glad you mentioned the USB speed because I got a little tablet to use, but I want to check out and see if it's fast enough to handle the job.
I don't think you can run Nina. Well, I don't know the software you're thinking of because I don't believe Nina will run on a tablet anyway.
No, I got Digicam Control already installed on it.
Yeah.
I just want to test it out now and work out all the kinks.
If the data is left behind on the camera and not downloaded, then you're only telling it. Then it's only take a shot, take a shot. This ISO, this exposure time, take an image, right? So that's not going to be any issue for communication. It's communication speed becomes a problem when you're trying to download live feed, or if you're trying to download captured raw data because they're huge, and they will eat up your bandwidth on your USB. But on that's why almost all newer astro imaging cameras are all USB-C because of communication speed. So yeah, but if the data is staying on the SD card, it doesn't matter. It's all local.
Yeah, which was what I was planning on doing, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
That's good.
Jeffrey, I have a question. You've created your own stacking software and alignment software, is that correct?
Laura might be able to speak more about this. This is something that we have programmers to basically do that function.
Yeah.
But writing in Python.
Let me just mention that. So Juan, who's going to be talking at 5, who's our solar scientist, when we got all our 2017 data, he worked with a student at Berkeley. He's at UC Berkeley, and they created, just like Jeffrey said, Python code to stack the images and make an HDR and basically create what are known as FITS files. Many of you know what those are already, but they're just, for those of you who don't, they're pictures that you're taking, but then they have information in a header that tells anyone using that picture where this picture was taken, and the GPS, a whole bunch of different metadata information that we need to analyze the data. And so they created the FITS files, and then there's Python code to create high dynamic range images or HDR images with the data set that we had from 2017. So we have all that code, which we can let you have and use. It's all open source. So Troy Klein, who's here on our call with us, he's part of our team, and he's a computer science major from here at Sonoma State University, and now working on our team. And he and a professor here at Sonoma State whose expertise is in machine learning and in image analysis, they're helping us clean up that code. And then it will be available on different sites, but one thing we're going to work on is having a competition for people to see if they can use machine learning to find things in the images we didn't find before. And it will start with the Python code we already have. So right now, Troy is cleaning that code up right now, it's very much internal code. I mean, it's doesn't have a lot. It's got some comments in it. I don't know, Troy, do you want to add any more about that process? It's taken a while to get through, I think. And it's fine if you don't have anything to add. But I see you just unmuted.
It is taking a while to get done.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess. It really was meant for us to use. And now we got funded by NASA. We're going to make it available for you all to use and other people to use. So it
Mhm.
does take I've run some of the stacking code on my Mac, which is an i7, and it has four cores. And it took me 24 hours of runtime to stack 5 images. So it is, I mean, it's Python code. So we're not using pointers, or for those of you who know C, it's much more efficient. We might have to go to C eventually. I don't know. Anywho, it's a long.
Yeah, and just to get through the FITS files that we have in the file itself takes about 10 hours of pulling down the images from the archive and converting them into FITS files.
Well, the reason why I was asking is because I have a dedicated machine. I have a dedicated machine, and I was a part of the Eclipse 2017, the Megamovie. So I stacked my own stuff. But if you have really software that can automate the alignment of it and so on, and make my life so much easier, I'd be glad to use it.
Yeah, you can be one of our testers for the use of it. Yeah, we've got a machine learning person on our team who's going to test it, and then that would be great. Thanks, Liam. I know there's a lot of questions about Mac OS, and the reason we're not really answering you is we just are not quite sure. Xavier, who wrote the code to have to connect cameras to the Macs, did not update them because Mac made such a gigantic change in the OS this last round that to basically update his code, he just doesn't have the resources to do it. So we're looking for either him suddenly to get a windfall of resources, or for people who have older cameras and Macs that his resource can still work, and we can put that in the chat as well. So but in terms of newer cameras and Macs, we have not yet found a solution. So we're kind of waiting for the solution to appear.
Yeah, on the Macs, it will run. You can run Xavier software on a Mac, an Intel-based Mac. It will not run the newer Macs, but the Intel-based Macs, which is OS X 10, I believe, or something like that, is what it runs on. I have it running as a VM inside there. So I have a Windows VM running inside the Mac to run the software to get it to work. But and it's an old Intel Mac, but that's the only way to get it to do it. If you have an old Mac, use it.
Yeah, because the new Macs are using ARM processors, I guess.
They're ARM, and they're M1, they're what, M1, M2, M3. They're really different. So yeah, if you have the old Intel based Macs, you can actually downgrade your OS, which you'd have to, or you could run a virtual machine inside in your Mac if you have enough memory, install Windows, and then install the Eclipse Orchestrator or Eclipse Maestro on top of the Windows machine. So it's very convoluted, but you can get there.
Okay, well,
Denny, I have it working, Denny. Since I saw that in chat, I have it working on an Intel Mac.
On an Intel Mac, though, not an
An
ARM.
old Intel Mac. Yeah, it doesn't work on the new ones, but on the old Intel ones, it does work.
Yeah, so Denny's correct if Denny has a ARM processor.
Yeah.
I have a MacBook that I run that stuff on. And from what I understand, they changed they changed the operating system so much when they went to the new operating system that the doors that he was pushing stuff through are no longer there. The connections, and some of the connections are illegal to go through.
Yep. That's interesting. Okay, so it is 5 o'clock.
Okay, great. So Dar should stop recording.
Stop recording. Oh, so we can start recording.
Exactly.
Aha.